All right. So today we're going to explore JavaScript objects and writing object-oriented programming in Java, which isn't a necessity. JavaScript can do object-oriented programming, but it can also do procedural programming or programming without objects. And JavaScript has its own style of objects that are not prototypical or that are not object-oriented. They're called prototypical, meaning it has a prototype instead of a class. But JavaScript in recent years has also added a class functionality, which behaves more like you would expect from a typical object-oriented programming language. So let's just go ahead and we'll start by exploring the character relations, and we'll do a little bit of testing. So let's go ahead and begin by, I just made some check-ins that demonstrate part of what I want to do, and we'll go through the rest. But go to github.com/testwizardry, and we're at testwizardry game, which, as I said, I think I'm going to rename to testwizardry web. But in order to get that, I've got it already checked out. But in order to keep me honest and to keep me disciplined, I'm going to remove the whole project, and then I'm going to start from the fresh source code to build out. Okay, so I've got testwizardry game. And this is just good discipline, I think, for me to be able to start from scratch, and that'll also make me more likely to commit my changes and to test them, which I didn't do when I committed my changes this morning. But we'll talk a little bit about testing tomorrow as well. We're going to get some tests running with Selenium. I actually have a few running, but I haven't demonstrated it. So tomorrow will be our first introduction to testing testwizardry with Selenium. Today we're going to back up a little bit, and we're going to use Mocha for testing. So let's go ahead and open Visual Studio Code for our project. Oh, and it looks like I broke my app. Oh, that's because I deleted it. All right, so here's our GitHub, and here's our Visual Studio Code, our project. Let's start off with a little refactoring. What I want to do is I want to take all my HTML and images and everything and move it into a public folder. And I'm just going to hop on over to the command line to do that. So I'm going to make a folder called public. And public is going to be where we serve our HTML from. So I'm going to go ahead and kill my web server as well. Again, the web server is live server. You can get that with npm install-g live-server. While that's installing, it's already installed. I've made the directory public. And if we just look at our file, so we've got all these files. We've got fonts and images directory, but we've got everything in the project root. Let's clean it up. So what we want to do is we want to move everything that's an HTML file to public. And then we look at our file tree. Let's go ahead and move everything, our acceptance letter and so forth, to public as well. And then we can actually look at it in the file explorer. Let's see, temp, testwizardry, game. All right. And then what we want to also do, we're going to move our fonts directory into public and our images. Okay. Exactly. And move images to public and
objects also.
And what?
Objects? Do we need to?
Well, we can. Objects is actually an experiment. We're going to move that as well. Objects is just that's my experiment that I'll demonstrate this morning. So yes, I do want to move that. All right. Now we have this configuration file. What we want to do is we want to move this into test. Let's rm. I've got this empty file called file that I created. Let's look at our project directory. We've got our Git directory for our project, our GitHub directory, which is for our GitHub actions, our git ignore. Those are going to all stay in the project group. But the node module stuff is going to move into the test directory. So what we want to do is and we're going to leave our package.json and our package lock.json. And, oh, and we also need to move our style.css to public as well. All right, so we go to public and we look at our directories here. What we also want to do is we want to create a directory called style and move style.css to style. So we'll have multiple CSSs, multiple style sheets.
Yeah.
And they'll be in the styles directory. So we're going to restart up our web server again. So live server. Now, instead of doing it in the project group, we want to specify public as the directory for live server. All right, I think I must have moved everything. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to live server public. There we go, and it starts up. Now we can't get, why can't we get that? We started it from the public directory. So now we're in the test wizardry game. We want to start the live server specifying the public directory. There we go. And we've got it. Having some trouble with my mouse here.
Of public directory, like what will be the benefits of this?
The benefit is just to organize our files in a way. Because we have our tests separate from our web, we can deploy our web section, our public folder, without our tests.
Okay,
and it's just a way to clean up the structure, right? You can have everything out on your desk, or you can have it in neat piles and folders and drawers. And that's the analogy of using folders on the computer. So there's a couple things we'll need to do, and we're going to hop over into our code editor. And we need to open it again because we moved everything around. We have a bunch of files that were open in their old location.
Yeah, right.
I don't want just the public directory. I want so I want to go back to my project root directory. Yep, and then we open this up. I'm going to go ahead and minimize Slack, and I'm going to bring this over so I can see this at the same time I'm looking at my web page. All right, so the first thing you notice is we've lost our fonts and styling. So let's go ahead and correct that. We go to index. Well, our style sheet lives under styles/style. And if we move that, then oh, it's not under /style yet.
Yeah, right. We have to move it.
All right. Okay, so move public/style. Oh, and it looks like I renamed that and took the CSS to public styles / let's call it test wizardry, actually. Test wizardry.css. So we go back over here. We've got this, and we've got under our styles directory, we've got test wizardry.css, which is a little more descriptive. So that we can say styles test wizardry .css. There we go. And we still don't have our styles. Let's hit a refresh. There we go.
Yeah, we
That's a
got
better looking style. And then I'll also bring up my console and inspector. Okay, so we can click on apply now. And our other pages have lost the style as well. So we need to fix that by changing all the
copying
other
this.
files.
Yeah, right in
Yep.
now all the files.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the
Understood.
apply page, the accepted page, the character page.
What made you, start with the Harry Potter series? Like, do you like Harry Potter that much?
Well, actually, I was telling my children bedtime stories about Harry Potter, and it kind of turned into a choose your own adventure style game. And if you've ever seen the choose your own adventure books, it's a book that's kind of like a game where you read page 1 and it says, do you want to go on in this adventure or do you want to stay home? If you click go on this adventure, it'll say go to page 32, and it says you catch a flight to Antarctica, say, or whatever the story is, right? There's ones all sorts of different things, whether it's a haunted house or a criminal detective or a fantasy adventure. Anyway, so I was telling stories and I would let my children say, okay, you're going to Hogwarts and you've just been accepted to Hogwarts, and what do? Well, you go to Diagon Alley, and you first thing, having watched the movie, you go to Gringotts Bank, and you deposit or you withdraw your money from the bank. And they actually know a lot more about Harry Potter than I do. I've been learning as
Right.
I developed, but the process grew, and they run into their friends Harry and Ron and Hermione, or they take the persona of one of those characters, and in their story they might have to find their way past Fluffy, the giant 3-headed dog, or just things either from the movie or making stuff up. Dobby is Harry's friend, but Dobby spills all the food, and what are you going to do about that? Do you yell at Dobby or do you say that's okay? And so I said, this would make a great adventure game for kids, and so I started to develop it. And I said, this is actually a good training course for programming. And my son is just starting; he's 12 years old, and he's just starting to learn actually Python programming,
That's
is what we
nice.
started him on. And his uncle is also helping teach him that because he's a data science guy and big into Python.
That's
So
nice.
um, and so I thought, hey, let's do this. Let's do Harry Potter, and we'll get people who are interested. And the hardest part, I think, for coming up with a game or really any program is deciding what you're going to do. And by giving it, a structure, you're like Harry Potter going to school. It gives us, something to do so that the creative aspect can be a little bit subsumed to the learning aspect. At least that's my idea.
That's nice.
But now my kids have moved on. I'm a big Lord of the Rings fan, and my daughter has really gotten into it. She just read through the series. She loaned the books to her friend, and her friend read it, and they're talking about it. Her birthday party is going to be Lord of the Rings themed. Everyone's going to dress up, and she's rereading the series again. So I might have to do a Lord of the Rings game if we ever get through this. Right, we're still in the setup phase of this game, but let's go ahead and jump into it. So,
Yeah, sure.
all right. So we're going through. We're changing the style sheet on all these pages so that we've got the refactored changes in. And it is kind of difficult to do this an hour a day. I guess it'd be more fun to distill it down to a few things and say, okay, we've got all the content created. Then let's see, do I have the rejected page? No, let's go to the rejected page. But I do have limited time to work on this. Let me refresh this. Okay, that's looking good. I don't know why it's not picking up the styles automatically. That's kind of surprising. All right, and now we've got, let's see, let's go to accepted. Okay, dear undefined, undefined. Oh, we've broken our code as well. That's okay. Let's go back to our apply page. We'll clean everything out. Well, let's start at the beginning.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine.
All right. Okay, apply now. All right. What is your name? We'll choose Hermione Granger, female, 11, wizard, send application. All right. So we're looking good. Dear Miss Granger. Oh, I guess it said undefined because I clicked through without everything. And I broke the rule of the game, right? I cheated by going directly to
Direct to
the
that.
accepted URL instead of going through the path. That's another thing we'll need to do. And I was actually debating this morning if I want to try that. I think conceptually it's nice to have all these individual pages, but what if someone is playing the game and they bookmark the accepted page and they get there and it says dear undefined, or they get to something, they're visiting Fluffy the dog and they bookmark that page and they try to get back there and it doesn't have their character info or the items that they have. They need to put them to sleep with music, I think. So anyway, so it can get us into a weird state. And that's one thing that modern JavaScript frameworks have tried to combat. Rather than letting people get to a page with an unknown state, whether it's lacking data or without authentication or some other state related condition, rather than having these pages that can be bookmarked, what they do is they create a single page application, as they call it. And even if it looks like multiple pages, it's really only updating some or all of the content in the body, as well as manipulating the data, so that as you go from page to page, it's not actually loading full pages. It's not doing a full get to a URL and loading that into the browser. It's only rendering part of the DOM, even if it's replacing everything from the body on down. And the reason they do that is, number one, so you don't have to keep reloading all your JavaScript, because your JavaScript framework itself can be significantly more than your HTML and images and whatnot, although your images and graphics are probably going to outweigh your code. But so number one, to save having to reload the JavaScript. Number two, to make sure that the state comes in at the right condition, right? That you can't get to a point like we did going to the accepted page by typing the URL or loading a bookmark and not having the character information needed. All right. And I can see here on our cookies, we're still using cookies for player, gender, and age and stuff. So that's something else that'll need refactored. And this is the type of stuff that would be good for me to take care of offline, because you don't need to see that again. All right. So what we want to do is we want to, instead of having all these different elements, right? Character name, character gender, character status. What I want to do is I want to create a character object. And so let's start with that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually create a test, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a folder called model. And the model is usually meaning the data model. And I'm going to create a file called character spec.js. And I'm going to define what we want, right? And so this is the Mocha JavaScript framework, and it's designed to help you write documentation as you write your stuff. So I'm going to not define, describe a character. And I'll just say a character, comma, and then I'm going to create a function. So this is a callback function. The describe function calls this other function. And the other the other function that works as a keyword. So describe a character. It should have a name, right? and we create a function. That's the actual test implementation for that. So I'm going to have to try and define this outside. So what I'm doing here, var character equals these curly brackets. A curly brackets is a shorthand for what is it? Object create, right? Object create. Object is the base object, and object create is the function, right? Or the create is the function that creates an object literal. It does exactly the same thing as this.
So like in Java, we use the new keyword to create the object. In this,
Yes,
we are using object.create.
exactly. So
Understood.
in Java, right? In Java, you
My
do
knowledge
something
is
like,
limited to Java and Python.
okay,
That's the
well,
problem.
since you're here with me and there's not a big crowd, let's talk about Java. So in Java, you might say you have a character, right? And we'll call him Ron, and Ron equals new character. And you might pass his name for Ron, right? That looks pretty familiar to you, right? That Java.
Yes.
So in JavaScript, we can do something similar like that, and we'll get to that by the end of the class, I hope. But you can, in JavaScript, it's much simpler. Each object is just a set of keys and values, right? In a Java object, you have two different types of things. You have variables or properties, right? So you might have character and you'd have class character, and you'd have public string name and so forth, right? But you might also have so we might have public gender, which would be like male or female, or it's going to be an enum or something, right? And you'll have gender. Maybe it's a string for simplicity, but and then you might have public get salutation. Salutation. So Mr. or Mrs. Or whatever like that. And this is going to say, okay, if this gender equals male, and then you do return Mr., right? And so forth,
Yeah.
Miss, or whatever it is. So that's what it would look like in Java. Let's do it in JavaScript. And it's actually simpler, right? So what I can do is I can say character.name without defining it. I can just create a new property by doing this, and I can do Ron Weasley. And I can say console.log character, and that's just going to print the character. Now, I think what I'd want to do is I want to step out of doing this in a test. But no, let's keep it in the test, okay? So then what I'll do is I will
So are we using, when you write this Mocha, so it's
Yeah.
kind of similar to what we write the code in BDD, like the plain native English,
yes.
and we mention that, and then we do the action. I understood.
Yes.
I'm
So
now relating to things.
all right. So yeah. So Mocha is it's kind of a midway between Cucumber or JUnit or TestNG.
I understood.
All
I
right.
understood.
So then we run this, right? And let me see, npm test. And I want to, well, I'm going to install Mocha globally just to make it easier to see what's happening.
Okay.
So now it's available anywhere. I have it in my node modules directory. Oh, I don't have node modules. So what I actually also want to do is npm install save dev Mocha. So what this is doing is this is saving it to a project, and I'm doing some Node.js stuff that we probably don't need to explore today. But anyway, now I can type Mocha, and I can say I want to run tests in my test test specs model directory. So I'm going to run my character spec, and it says a character should have a name. Object prototype may only be an object or null undefined. What did I do wrong? Character spec 532.
I think we only created an object, but we did not. It's character name.
Yeah.
So if we mention character.name, then it will identify.
We actually don't need to do that in JavaScript. That's what I was trying to illustrate.
Okay.
So object create is to use, it uses an existing object. So I was wrong. Object create will take an existing object. There is a function, but what I really want to illustrate is you can just create an object like that. Well, if I get it right there. So that actually creates an object. And what I'll do is I'll console.log character here. So I'm creating a character, and then I'm an empty object is what it is, with no properties, no attributes, other than the base object properties.
So it will take the default value, is it?
What's that?
Will it take the default value?
It will.
Okay.
So if I do this, I can do a character should have a name. And of course, I'm not actually writing a test. And I can illustrate this in the Chrome console as well, right? I can say let. So that's another thing. I've used let sometimes, and I've used var sometimes. Var means variable. It's the traditional way of defining variables in JavaScript. Let works virtually the same. It's let character equal whatever, and I can say character, and it's an empty object. But you can see this empty object has this the prototype or the parent object is object.
Yeah, right.
And you can see that has a whole bunch of things. It has a constructor.
So it will create an object automatically.
Yeah. So I guess maybe it works like that. Let me try that. Yeah. So rather than object create, it's just the object.
It's only an object.
Yeah, you call.
Understood.
And what JavaScript does is, now newer JavaScript since 2015 on has had the ability to create classes. There was an experimental way you could do it before with shims or Babel, which is a transpiler. But I'm not going to go into that. JavaScript objects were just functions originally. So a function that returns another object, and I'm going to show you how that works as well. But what we want to do is we want to create a character and give him a name, give him an age, gender, give him a gender is male, and also semicolons are optional in JavaScript, but it's good discipline to keep them because you may accidentally write something that could be 2 lines, right? If I didn't have a semicolon here and I accidentally had this on here, it would append that to the string. So it's a good practice to use semicolons explicitly, just like it's a good practice to use brackets explicitly, even if they're not needed for like a single line, because you may add a second line. So we've got a getter, and then And what I've added is this other attribute. In apply, I've got like, what do I have? Wizard or witch or wizard or muggle. I have character status. What I want to do is I just want to say magical is true. And that means they're a wizard or a witch. Or if it's false, it means they're a muggle. I keep hitting that key when I mean to. My keyboard is having fun with me. All right, so now I can run this, and a character, you can see it has name, age, gender, and magical. And it's all in brackets. Now, this might look familiar to you like a hash map in Java. Everything has a key and a value.
Yeah.
In JavaScript, you've got all these keys and values, but that's what defines the object. Now, you can add other things. For instance, you can add a function, right? Character salutation, right? Mr., Miss. We can make this a function. So what we're doing is we're defining character salutation to be a function. And if now what I want to introduce is if this dot gender, this refers to this object, similar to Java, equals male. And single quotes, double quotes, they're identical. They work identically. The main purpose is so you can nest them in JavaScript. They work interchangeably is what I should say. But you can't match up a single quote against a double quote. So it's good to be consistent there. Okay, so if this gender equals male, then what I want to do is I want to return Mr. Otherwise, I would just want to return Miss. All right, so now I have this other function. And let's add some test conditions. Now, Mocha has a companion library called Chai. So what I do, I want to save Chai. I want to save it for development. Chai is an assertion library. So you have like Hamcrest assertions in Java, or AssertJ, which is my favorite assertion framework in Java. Now we can do things like we can say expect character to have property name equal to Ron Weasley. So that's pretty cool. Let's go ahead and run our test.
One question here, if we have to enter dynamic values, say under the character name values, then how we will be able to do that?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question?
My question was like, say in the name field right now, we are entering ron.weasley, and it's the method that we are creating is taking that. If we have to take some dynamic value, then?
I'm really having trouble understanding. So you enter the name Ron Weasley.
You're right. So say right now we are entering Ron Weasley, and we are checking that whether it's matching with Ron Weasley. But if we're entering some dynamic value, so we will be modifying the method.
Yeah. Well, right now I'm trying to illustrate two things without actually writing a useful test. Right. I'm trying to illustrate number one, how you can explicitly define an object, and number two, I'm trying to demonstrate how you can use the test library. So yeah, this isn't a useful test, right? Because we're checking this equal to that exactly. And
understood. But yeah, it's a good explanation.
Yeah. So I'll
keep myself on mute now.
No, that was a good question. I was just having trouble. There's an echo in my headphones, and so I didn't understand what you were saying. Like I didn't understand the words. All right, so let's try and see if I've got this. Okay, so now I've got two assertions. the first assertion says expect character to have property name. So does character have a property here that says Ron Weasley in it? And I should have that output. And then the other is expect the name to equal, well, that's obviously wrong there, right? Yeah, this test is essentially a tautology, meaning it defines itself. So now our test is passing. A character should have a name, and what it's doing is it's printing out our empty character on this first line, and then below it's printing out our full one. So let me show you another way that we could do this. Now I have these tests, and what I want to do is I want to move my character out of the individual tests so we can use it in multiple tests. And what I want to do is I want to write the tests and then refactor our object. So now, because this character is defined in the outer scope, it should be visible within the inner scope. But maybe I did something wrong. Let's test it. All right, looking good. A character should have a name. Check mark. All right, let's add another test. It should have an age. A character should have an age. We create another function. Notice how this is a function that includes a function as an argument, which is really kind of weird, right? I could create another function, check age, and then just pass it like that. This nested functions, because functions are object in JavaScript, and in Java they're not. They are a method, although there are the new Lambda style functions that you can pass around, which have a complex interface that they implement. But so I can just create a function here and call it check age. And this is a plain empty function, but it's not spelled right. Function. All right. Check age. Now what I want is the problem here is because my character scope is not visible, I could actually move my character. So the check age would require it to pass a parameter, and this callback function doesn't have that mechanism. But what I can do to further demonstrate, and this is not what we want. Notice here, oh, now it says expect equals require chai. So it's loading the chai library. This is like import in Python, or include, import in JavaScript, or sorry, I'm getting everything. Import in Java, include I don't know, I'm getting all my different languages. Anyway, require loads this library. It actually loads the chai library into this variable, and chai is a function, and expect, it calls it expect.
So in the way like in which in Java we import the libraries.
Yeah, right.
So
In Java you would do import, chai, right?
Yeah, I understood.
But import doesn't actually load it. It tells your compiler where to look for these other things. In this case, it's actually loading the file that contains this chai.js. It's actually going to be in my
I think in between I lost you because of the network issue.
Oh, okay. So that's my fine. Audio, the Zoom call was dead for a minute. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, this is importing the code into this variable. So it's like cutting and pasting it in almost. That's one way to think of it. But anyway, so now I have expect visible here in my code, and expect is a function, it essentially takes an object and it wraps that object to have these other methods. You know, to have, that those are kind of like no-op functions, and property is the actual test condition, right? So is equal to or whatever actually does it. And this just makes it easier to read these no-op methods.
What is the
Anyway,
meaning of no-op methods? Like what
that
actually
means
will
no
do?
operation. It doesn't do anything.
Okay.
So in JavaScript, if what it does is it creates a, well, it creates a, I'm going to pseudocode it a bit, right? So I'm going to have function expect, right? And it's going to have variable. It's taking a variable or an object in, right? And then what it does is in this, it creates a variable called, or a function, which doesn't have parameters, called to, and it doesn't do anything. It actually says, it's something like this, get to equals function that does nothing, right? And it works kind of like if you've used Fluent programming, where you do return this in Java. So it actually returns the object created by expect, so that you can chain the commands together.
Understood.
All right. And probably we should have spent a whole lesson introducing Mocha with nothing else, but here we go. So character name to equal Ron Weasley. Now it should have an age, check age, expect character dot age, or character to have property age. So it's saying and then character dot age to equal 11, right? And then we can run this. I just wanted to demonstrate that this is actually calling a function, and this is the function object that we're passing to the it function.
Understood.
All right, a character should have a name, a character should have an age. That works. Now, if I go up here and I delete character age and I run this, it's going to fail. Assertion error, expected object to have property age. It fails.
Okay, understood.
So let me add that back, right?
That's nice. So it's kind of assertion, the way that we add using JUnit and TestNG. That's nice.
Yeah, it works similar to that, right? So I might have character age, and I don't know if that'll actually define it or not. Nope. So I could say character age to equal null. So now it's not complaining expected to have property on line 30. It's saying expected null to equal 11 on line 31.
Yeah.
Now what I want to do is I want to show you my first refactor. Well, that's actually, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this back into this scope here. And then I'm going to create a couple more quick checks so that we can refactor.
So when we actually create the scope outside, that means we can use it anywhere in other JS files also.
No, only in this file. But you can export or import. So using require in this case, there's another command called import, which is new, right? JavaScript in the last 5 years has undergone a huge transformation. So require is the Node.js way of loading things, the old Node.js way of doing things.
Understood.
The modern way of loading files in JavaScript uses a keyword called import, or rather a function called import. But it requires you to use a recent version of JavaScript, and I try and keep things on a level that'll work for new or old JavaScript, at least when I can. So rather than just age, a character should have a gender. So should have property gender and equal to male. should have a magical status. Expect a character to have property magical, and expect a character magical to be true. All right, let's run all these, and then I'm going to refactor our character and show you two different ways we can create objects. Expected null to equal 11. Oh, because
we haven't changed the value
okay,
there.
we'll fix that. Good. All right, a character has a name, an age, and a magical status. And okay, yeah, now what I want to do is I want to refactor this. So the next way we can do this is I can actually define my character literally. If you've ever like statically created a list or a hash map in Java, right? In Java, you might say list equals new array list, or you do arrays from, or is it arrays as? I don't remember. It's so easy to make language, but you can then pass in the properties, right?
Yeah.
So JavaScript works kind of like that. This is kind of the default way to create an object in JavaScript, right? We can have name, Ron Weasley, and we write it just like we see it, and it looks very much like JSON notation, right? JavaScript object notation is really just JavaScript objects, and the only difference is the keys are also strings in JavaScript or in JSON, right? So this looks like valid JSON right here. From, if I do this from line 4 through whatever through 7, that's valid JSON, right? And JavaScript, to use JSON, this is where JSON came from. You're literally passing around JavaScript objects. Age is 11. Gender is male. And what else? Oh, magical is true. And in the case of a number or a Boolean, we don't have to include it in quotes as a string. We could and then interpret it. What happens when we just try this like that? It still works, and we can even remove magical like that just to verify it does fail. Good. So our tests are working. So this makes it really easy in JavaScript. If you get JSON or you create JSON, you have an object, and it has the properties of object, as you saw from object prototype. You also, the keys don't have to be strings. So this is also fine here.
Understood.
Okay, a character should have a name. We're doing good. Now we can also add functions like we did, right? Salutation, and notice salutation is a key. It's followed by a colon, and we create this function. And if this dot gender, this again referring to this object, the object scope, equals, and instead of dot equals, JavaScript overloads the equals sign, male. Return Mr. I've got to be consistent in my quotes. Else return Miss. And then let's it should get salutation. Expect character salutation function call to equal Mr. Let's see, reference error expected is not defined on 46. We missed something up there. Expect character salutation. Calling salutation. Let's paste this, and the Google so I can use the Google dev tools as my JavaScript. Okay, character has already been declared at anonymous. Let's do this. Ron equals okay. Ron.name, Ron Weasley, Ron.gender, Ron.salutation. It's a function. It returns Mr. What is going on? Let me see here. A character should get salutation. Expected is, oh, a simple typo. I have expected instead of expect. That was your job to catch, Divya.
I'm really sorry.
No, I'm just kidding. All right, so it gets a salutation. Now what we can do is let's create another character. You notice how I did Ron there? So
we can create multiple.
Yeah, we can
That's
create
great.
multiple characters.
That's nice.
And then we can
Hermione Granger.
Yeah.
I think I have the doll of her also. Let me show you that.
You have what?
That's a crazy. It's a small doll that I have with me.
Oh, you have a Hermione doll?
Yeah.
All right. Do you want to show it on your video?
Yeah, doing that.
All
You're
right.
able to see it?
No, I don't see your video. Let me see the participants. Yeah, I don't think you're sharing video right now.
I'm doing that.
Well, it's not. Oh, maybe I need to expand to see you then. Oh, there we go. I see it. Cool. Let me make it bigger so I can see, because it's a tiny little.
Yeah.
Awesome. Are you a Hermione fan? All right.
Yes.
All right. So now we've got our spec. Let's test our spec. Now there's a way to loop through this. I'm not sure exactly. How to do so. I'm going to use my old friend, my long-term memory store. I want to use Google. Iterate Mocha tests. I think we could actually do a for around each if, right? We could do yeah, so I could literally I could say for and I always forget JavaScript. It's got so many things. For, in, or, of. One of them's for object, one's for array. For, in, so for, of, to loop over. We want my array iterate. Oh, I hadn't even heard of that. All right, we'll experiment. For character in Ron and Hermione, we're going to perform all these tests. And of course, they're all going to fail for Hermione, right? Character is not defined. Oh, I need to do var character. No. Okay. We could just do it in a normal for loop, but I wanted to do it in
You want to do it in for each. I understood.
character is not defined on line 38. Maybe I've got a typo. Oh, yeah. We just don't have character right there. So we need to move that into our loop maybe. Because we changed it to the names, the name of the variables is the name of the person. All right, awesome. So should have a name, should have an age. Expected Hermione to equal Ron. So we actually need to check that. Now we don't have a good way of testing this separately. So what we want to do is what we could do is we could describe Ron and describe Hermione. The other thing we can do is we can just extend our Ron.name. Well, right. That's a totally useless test. We can just check that.
That it's not empty. Understood.
Yeah. All right, let's try this out. So everything's passing, but we see Hermione is male there, and I didn't correct that.
Yeah, female. Yes. And in under salutation also.
What? Yeah. And so, yeah, we've got here. So just looping through, because we haven't thought about how to structure our tests, that this isn't going to work, right? So what we want to do is we want to describe let's just describe Ron as function. So you can see I can nest these describe blocks. And so I'm going to cut and paste a little, right? And then within this block, I'm going to, Ron should have a name. His name should be, all right. Let's see, we've indented all that another level. We need a close bracket there. And remember that bit about having semicolons everywhere. This is the usual exception that when you have these nested functions, you often don't include that. But then we'll do the same thing. We'll describe Ron and we'll describe Hermione and run all their tests independently.
Understood.
And well, let's run it with everything as Ron to make sure all of Hermione's tests fail and all of Ron's succeed. All right, a character
Is not defined.
Ron should have a name. Now, all of Ron's tests are failing too. Character is not defined. Oh, because let's do this. We'll do var character equals Hermione. And then here we'll do var character equals Ron rather than trying to paste all those. There is a way to do data-driven Mocha, but I'm not going to try and tackle it today since we're almost out of time and we didn't actually even get to the point where I wanted to incorporate these tests into our site. Okay, so Ron's working, Hermione's not. So let's fix all of hers, all of her tests to reflect what we're expecting. The age is going to be the same. She's magical, okay. And now our salutation, we're actually testing a function. So all of these other ones are really useless tests, right? Other than a character should have a name and a gender. But in Java, when you define in the class all of these properties, it's pretty much a sure thing, right? You'll get a compile error if you don't define the name. Or when you create an object, it's going to have a property called name. If you have a setter or if you have a setter for name, it's going to set it or not. So we don't need to do all these checks. But in JavaScript, because you may be getting objects that are created on the fly like this, that all I have to do is accidentally delete this line and my test is going to fail. And here we go.
Yes.
We just lost
it. Not,
so
yeah, that line is
unit
not there.
tests at the level of getters and setters and properties are more important in a dynamic, loosely typed language like JavaScript than in a strongly typed compiled language like Java. That's one thing I wanted to point. Now, there's also a way we can do tests. And here's what I should have done is I should have created different users and define them in different ways so we could see how it works. So now what I want to do is I want to do Harry equals new person. And we can do that in Java or in JavaScript as well. First, I'm going to create a person.
Understood.
And I might actually do this so that name is of type string because it's loosely typed. Age is of type integer. Gender equals, we'll put that as null. And magical is null. And now another thing I wanted to point out when I do this is I can, rather than new person, I can do object create person. And now I think my editor is going to know like Harry has age and whatnot. So I can set all these things. If I had some default values in here, right, I might have magical be true by default. And then if I create a series of tests for Harry, cut and paste challenges, oops. Define Harry. Oops, I didn't. I guess what would be even better is having console.log character for our sanity check. All right, so, and we'll define Harry's property so we know we've got it right when he's properly defined. His age will be the same, his gender will be male, and magical will be true. And salutation will be Mr. So we run our tests. All right, expected 0 to equal 11, expected quote, quote, name to not be empty, expected null to equal male, which is fine, and salutation is not a function. So what we can do up here is when we define Harry, we can say Harry.name equals Harry Potter. Harry.age equals 11.
11.
Harry.gender equals male. And we should have passing tests now, right?
Yes.
Except for salutation.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you how we've got some duplication, right? It's cool that you can create a literal object and define everything, including functions in that object. But we don't want to do that. We want to only type this function out once. So I can start off by saying function salutation. Now this isn't tied. It would make sense, right? And you would see salutation in Java. You could say this is something that is stateless. All we need to know is a gender, so we can pass a gender to this.
Understood.
And then we don't need to do this dot gender, right? And that should work. But we can also add this. Now we're using this function here.
Yeah.
But
and it will return the value.
Yeah. Well, but the problem is we're passing the gender. So what we can do is we can actually define the function on person. So what we want to do is we can say person dot prototype dot salutation equals this function. Here we go.
Understood.
There we go. And so now we're I've got something. Oh, I'm missing a bracket here. All right, so now I've got a I've got an extra parentheses down here below, or an extra bracket.
Does it make any difference, like the extra spaces? I think it's not like Python. Python would give us an error that we have given extra indentation or something like that.
Yeah, JavaScript doesn't care about white space.
Okay.
Not like Python. So now we have person. So this is like having a static function within a class in Java. The prototype, the initial only person is an actual physical object. It's not just a class. That's where prototype versus class-based comes into effect. A class is a definition for creating an object. You would do new whatever. In this case, a person is a physical object, right? It's an instance of an object. It just has all these properties that are unset or undefined or set to null, whatever. But what I'm doing is I'm saying tie to the prototype of the person object. So any object that is extended from or created or copied from a person. And that's what object create does. It really just does a deep copy. And so now, I need to delete this function. Now let's run our tests.
It will run.
Now, I'm expecting Ron and Hermione will fail. Cannot set property salutation of undefined. Oh, we don't need to do that now.
Salutation of undefined.
That's all.
Yeah.
Character spec line 24. What have we got? Let me see, I might have a prototype JavaScript function. Person prototype name equals function. Maybe it doesn't like the name of the function in there. Line 24 still. Oh, because it's not a function. I think I'd have to do that funky ... proto. Is this where we were just at? All right, so what I want is I want person to be a function, right? And here I can do just var age, var gender, var magical. So we've got a function we're passing the parameters. So a function is an object, as I said, and we can actually pass in these parameters. So name, age, gender, magical. And then I would do the, okay, so this dot name equals name. This dot age equals age. This dot gender equals gender. This dot magical equals magical. Now notice there's no type checking still. That should work. Let's give it a try. There we go. Expected person to equal Harry Potter. Oh, because it's not defining. So here I can actually do Harry equals. Let's make it. Oh, we don't even need to create a variable. So we've got this function. Now we can do Harry equals. I call the person function. By calling new person. Person is not defined. Oh, capitalized it to distinguish that it's a constructor. Okay, so now we just have Ron and Hermione don't have the function. So we create the function called getSalutation. And then we say person.prototype.salutation equals getSalutation, referring to the function itself, not calling the function, not passing a parameter, but defining the value of this variable salutation to be the function object itself, not calling the function. And so the same thing I can do for Hermione and Ron is I can say salutation is getSalutation. And one thing to note here is that in JavaScript, what it's actually doing is it's interpreting this linearly, but what it's doing is when I define a variable, it hoists it to the top. So to be clear, let's move this to the top, because this is what it's going to do is it's going to take a function and hoist my functions to the top and then define my variables. All right, let's see if I've got any typos in here. All right, expected miss to equal Mr. for Ron. What's going on there? Oh, because it's not passing the variable. So what I could do is I could call it one time. This is where it gets tricky about scoping. Okay, so anyway, what I wanted to get to was showing you the different way of using the function here. And so I can actually define var Ron equals new person, Ron Weasley, 11, male, and magical, and Hermione as well. And she's female. There's some logic in my function here. If gender equals male, return Mr., else return Miss. That seems pretty straightforward. Let's throw some debugging in here. Undefined, that's why. So be explicit on there.
Okay, we are keeping that also in condition.
Yeah, but what's happening here is we're not getting the gender in the get salutation function.
Understood.
So let's look at our output. Hermione has a. Let's run this now. Hermione should fail too now. Yeah, so now Hermione fails because it doesn't default to miss.
Yeah.
So I'm going to actually add that here. I don't think this is going to make a difference. No, it didn't. It's not. Oh, because we're not passing it, right? We're doing character salutation to equal.
Yeah,
so
right.
what, so our prototype, or rather our function, pass instance or access instance variable in prototype function JavaScript. This may not be possible without doing some really weird tricks, like having function creators. Nope, there's no way. Okay. So, I mean, there is a way to do that, and that is to have a function that generates our person that then returns an object that has that. In other words, to wrap it in an outer scope but within a closure, and to have a generator function. But there is a way around this. And now I'm going to do, like I said, in 2015, JavaScript introduced classes, although there was possible. So what I can do is I can do class person. And this is going to look very similar to what you would do in Java, right? In our class person, we would have a constructor. We just call our constructor function constructor name, age, gender, magical. And then we would say this dot name equals name. I'll just grab all that since I'm not a great typist. So I'm defining a class person just like I would in Java. I'm setting these default. Notice I'm not actually defining these properties separately. I'm setting them in a constructor. And then what I can do is I can create a getter with the get keyword. Let me see.
So we are applying the encapsulation concept that is there, getter and setters.
Yeah. So what this does is this creates this is like doing var salutation equals function. But what it's doing is it's saying I've got a property and I've got a getter, and I need to look up the correct syntax. I think maybe I just say get salutation is a function. Oh yeah, I just do get and then I define it as a function, and it treats it as a variable. C# has something similar like this. Oh. All right, so now let's try this last instance of our thing. Gender is not defined. Do I have a typo? Oh, I need to, again, use the local scope. Now, in JavaScript, you always have to be explicit about if it is in the object scope. All right. And now, what I can do is, rather than call salutation as a function, I can access it as a property. And so I'll do that for each of these. And we should have a passing test, about half an hour ago before running into these issues. We just didn't have time. Missing on what line? 59. Aha. mess that one up too. I messed them all up. 3 typos in a row. All right, we've got all these passing tests. Okay, so let's go ahead and end there. And tomorrow what I'll do is I'll have these incorporated in, and we'll actually use this person class in an object, and I'll show you how we can include that as an external script. Because the other thing I wanted to point out is that our HTML files are getting pretty crowded with JavaScript, which makes it hard to work on the HTML by itself. So I'm going to show you how you can actually reference a script tag, and you would just do script source equals whatever.js, just like you would reference your style sheet or an image. Well, not quite just, but similar to. So
that means we can create another JS file, and it will be picking the data from there.
Well, it won't get the data from there, but we can create functions and variables that we can then preload.
Okay.
And so there's 3 things we want to apply tomorrow. Number 1 is using object-oriented techniques with JavaScript to keep track of our data rather than this character underscore name, character underscore gender, all these different variables. We will create an object for these. And I wanted to show you more about another way to use object literals to define these functions. But yeah, there's 2 ways to create objects. One is to use class, and there's an object literal way, like we literally defined it with the curly braces, and include all these functions as well. It's really a matter of preference how you want to do that. But in that case, if you want to have it in a prototype, you still need to reference the prototype for that. Anyway, then the next thing is we want to have our scripts. We just want to include scripts as JavaScript files into our page rather than cutting and pasting all this data into our pages. And then the third thing is to incorporate the local storage so that we can actually just save our character object into local storage and get that. And that'll be some more cleanup. And then the next thing I wanted to show you is how to have a character get items, because it's taken us a little longer than I hoped, but we need to get to Diagon Alley and purchase our school books, our magic wand, our robes, and all those other things we need to get to Hogwarts. And then hopefully by the end of next week, we'll close this this scope out where we actually get all our items and we get to the Great Hall within Hogwarts, and we're able to put on the sorting hat and be assigned to one of the houses: Gryffindor, Slytherin, Ravenclaw, or Hufflepuff.
Yeah, that looks good, Aaron. Do you have knowledge about backend also? Backend development also?
Yes, and that's going to be in a future session. Is we can create this app entirely in the front end, but we also want to have a back end so that we can save things, and we'll build REST APIs to do things like get character information.
That looks good.
All right, but that's not going to be a part of this round of the test. We're focusing right now on HTML and client-side JavaScript. But in a couple weeks, we'll see what we can do to come up with a server-side course as well. All right. Well, thanks. It's been good chatting with you.
Yeah.
And I hope I was clear enough in my explanation of object-oriented. I was trying to iterate through the simplest way of doing it up to the modern way where like in Java, you would just use the class to define.
Yes, that's clear. I think I just need to practice a little.
Yep.
Mostly this weekend, I'll pick it up. Thanks.
All right.
Thanks for your time.
Okay. Take care. Bye.
You too.